Hello, this is LJ Haydorn with another edition of the How to Make a Character dealing with the Pathfinder game, the Core Rulebook, particularly Pathfinder Society. And we are going to be talking about Chapter 3, Classes. Now this I'm going to break up into several sections, so there'll be plenty of Chapter 3 pieces on YouTube. And I want to create a piece for each and every class. So that way, if there's a particular class you want to hear about, you'll be able to just pick on that class. Now, first off, I want to hit upon the basics of like what classes are there and what they in general do, as well as advancing your class, multi-classing, favorite class, and then that'll be the end of this broadcast. So, first off, there are many different classes that you can be in the Core Rulebook of Pathfinder. Now, in particular, I'm only going to cover what's in the Core Rulebook. There are lots of other classes out there that are available in supplemental books, but they are not available to play in the Pathfinder Society core games. There are non-core games which open those up, but I'm not going to be covering those. So, in particular, let's go ahead and start. This is on page 30. We start off with Barbarian. Barbarians are these wild men of living just basically in the uncivilized areas of the world, the living in little tribes or maybe even great big tribes, depending on how big the barbarian hordes are. But they're these berserk fighters who just decimate everything, go into these blood rages and hack things down. But that's, in general, that's just a very brief overview of what a barbarian is. Now, the next one is Bard. Now, Bards are these multi-functional, it's a multifunctional class. They do lots of things. It's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. So, now, Bards in general are kind of the buffers of the party. They buff up all the abilities of, or buff up the other party members through spells or through singing or playing a musical instrument, things like that. They also build up like fame and things, and they have these different abilities that they can get, but we'll cover Bard in a little bit. That's just a very generic overview. The next is Cleric. Clerics are the holy men of the world. They have they follow a particular god or goddess, perhaps, or you can even be a generic cleric if you don't have a particular one. And they tend to heal. They're very skilled at it, healing, using magic given to them from their gods to heal others, even getting so powerful as to raise somebody from the dead and bring them back to life. But their gods give them these powers, channel this power to them, and they can use it to do lots of different things, whether to hurt or to heal or to buff. But they are a very heavy magic using class, as far as getting their magic from their gods, though. And very devout to that god. Now, you don't have to play this whole devout thing, so don't get caught up in that. But the next thing is Druids. Druids are kind of sort of like a cleric, but really they are the very in tune with nature, and because of this tuning with nature, they get their powers from nature and get them all these spells that they can do, and that are really kind of nature based. And there's a lot of really cool spells that they have, but they're kind of like hermits out there. But they're also very friendly with nature, very in tune to the point of animals tend to easily bend to their will, and they gain like an animal follower. One of the things, cool abilities Druids has too, is shape changing. Now they get this as, I think it starts about 4th level, and the shape changing ability allows them to change forms to, say, like a bear or an owl or bat, and as they go up higher and higher levels, they can change into bigger things or even smaller things. So right off the bat, they have a very small set of range, a small or medium-sized creature. But as they get higher level, they can start changing into large creatures like like a polar bear or some sort of giant beast, or maybe even tiny like a fly. So very cool. That's what they're known for. The next class is the fighter class. Now, the fighter class is what you would consider your typical fighter that you would see in any sort of medieval movie. They are the men-at-arms. They wear the armor. They're excellent with their weapons and bows and things like that. They could be a mercenary. They could be part of the king's guard. They could just be a hired. Well, mercenaries are kind of hired guns, but the traveling fighter who's looking out for those who are in need. That's a possibility. Now, the next class is monk. Now, monks are the martial artists of the world. They use their body to attack their opponents. Because of this, they don't have as many skills with weapons. They do have some weapons, but not as many as the fighter would have. But they're more used to fighting without armor, with their bodies, with their hands, and kicking and things like that. And they get all sorts of really cool abilities because of that. A lot of the abilities you would see maybe in some of the martial arts movies. So, like, moving super quick, or, stunning fists and things like that. Or, flurry of blows with all these fists coming at you. So, that's a monk. Paladin. Now, paladins are pretty neat. They're like the holy warriors of the medieval times. They are devoted follower of a particular deity, perhaps, or maybe like a chivalrous knight, and they have these high standards, depending on what they believe in. But because of this devotion that they have to their God gives them these powers, magic powers, as well as some regular powers that are magical in nature, but not spells. But they get their spells a little bit later on in their career as a paladin, not right from the get-go. So it's kind of like a cleric, but more of a fighter than a cleric. So, but it's kind of a cross between. Now, the next class is ranger. Rangers are these outdoor huntsmen. They go out there and they can track anything down, hunt anything down. They know nature left and right. They could be any sort of environment. You could have a ranger of the desert, or you could have a ranger of the forest, or a ranger of the city, or things like that. They have a particular environment that they're very well suited to, and they meld so well with that environment. They know the ins and outs, and they also have spells that they'll get. Now, very limited amount of spells, just kind of like the paladin, and these spells aren't gained until a little bit later on, at a little higher levels of the ranger. But they also will get an animal follower, and their animal follower comes on a little later on, I think around 4th level, unlike the druid, who would get an animal follower right from the get-go. So, next class is the rogue. Rogues are, think like Mission Impossible, where someone's breaking into a building to go get the jewels or whatever, bypassing all these detection devices and traps and whatnot. Well, rogue would do that. They would be able to look for traps, find them, disable them, bypass them, sneak into a castle, get around everybody without being seen. And or they may be the person that you send behind enemy lines to spy on what the enemy's doing, let us know what's going on, sabotage what they're doing, and come back to us. And that's what a rogue would do. The next class is sorcerer. Sorcerer is like a mage that has spells that they know all the time. They get a lot of spells every day that they can cast. But because they automatically know all their spells off the bat, they get fewer spells, different spells that they would know. Versus the next and last class, Wizard. Now, with a wizard has lots of spells they could possibly know. But every day, they have to look in their spell book and say, I'm going to learn these particular spells out of my spell book. And I can't learn them all today. I only can learn so many of each different spell level. And they would pick which ones they want and how many of them they're going to learn that particular day. They could learn the same spell twice or more if they wish to, as long as they've got the spell slots. But a sorcerer is different from that because they don't pick which ones they know. They automatically know all the spells. They don't have a spell book. Their mind is their spell book, and these powers are coming from inside them. So that's a little different. Plus, sorcerers also have this thing where they make a bond with a supernatural entity of some sort that gives them additional powers beyond what like a wizard would have. The next thing to look at, what happens? Does my character ever get stronger? And if I get stronger, how do I do this? What is it in the game? Well, and the way Pathfinder works, you would have what's called character levels, and then there's things called class levels. Now, class levels isn't shown here on page 30 on this table 3-1, but with a character level, as you would get experience points in a game, the column slow, medium, and fast tells you how much experience points it takes to get to each level. And that would be in a typical home campaign Pathfinder game. With Pathfinder Society, they don't really have experience points like this that we would normally get into. So don't look at those at all. Pathfinder experience is different. It goes on 2 different tracks, either slow or medium. And how its experience works is if you go on the medium pace or the average pace, for every 3 games you play, you would go up a level. Everybody starts at first character level. Every 3 games you play, you go up a level. So after the first 3 games, on the 4th game, you are now playing as a level 2 or character level 2. If you go with a slow progression, it's double that. It would be every 6 games you play, you would go up a character level. And character level and class level are different. We'll get to that in 1 second. The next thing we look at is the second to the last column on the right there, feats. Feats are things that, like I was talking about this before in chapter 2, it's like a superpower, but it's not as powerful as a superpower. Like, oh, I'm Superman, I can fly. Well, no, that's not a feat. The feats aren't quite that powerful, but they are fairly powerful. They're more powerful than a skill would be. So, but they're like special abilities you have. And it says, hey, at first character level, you get your first feat. So you start off with 1 feat. The last column there is ability scores. Now, ability scores, these are beyond everything that you've done with your character. When you first make your character, based upon whether you roll dice or with Pathfinder Society, you start with 10s on all your abilities, and then you add or subtract to those scores to give you your final score or close to final score, and then you would pick your race and you would tack that on to it. Well, ability scores go on top of all that. It would be 1 extra ability point that you get to add to any 6 of those attributes, and you get this once every 4 levels. So at 4th, 8th, etc., you would get a 1 extra ability point to assign wherever you want. Now, once you get the 4th level and you say, hey, I got 1 ability point I want to spend, you can put it anywhere. You could say, hey, I want to put it in strength. And then when you get to 8th level, you go, I'd love it to have an extra 1 in dexterity. And you could do that. So you don't have to put them all in the same one. Now, the next thing is, what happens, when I go up a level? what's the difference? Now, this is where we're talking about character level versus class level and multi-classing. Now, once you get to second character level, you have the option. Let's just say you start off as a character level 1, and you said, I'm going to be a fighter. My fighter class level is 1 as well. Now I get to character level 2. I can choose to remain a fighter, and if I remain a fighter, I'm character level 2 and fighter class level 2. But now, maybe instead of doing that, I said, I would love to learn how to be a mage as well. So you would say, I'm character level 2, I'm fighter level 1, wizard level 1. So you add up all the different classes you have, all the levels, and that gives you your total character level. So you can't exceed that. So, if you're a 5th character level, it means when you add up all those class levels, they can't exceed level 5. So, all right. Now, the last thing we're going to cover at the end of this, before we end this broadcast, is favored classes. Favored classes are kind of neat. You get to pick, and you pick it right from the get-go, what class is your favorite class. And what a favorite class means is every time you gain a level in a favorite class, such as we're talking about the fighter-wizard combination. If you said, my guy, his favorite class is I don't know, say fighter. Every time you gain a level of fighter, you get to choose to get an additional hit point or to get an additional skill rank or skill point. Your choice. And the only thing is when you pick your favorite class, you're stuck with that favorite class for the remainder of your character's life. So if you die and you brought back to life, you still have that same favorite class, so you're just nothing different there. You can also not choose a prestige class to be your favorite class. And prestige classes they're very much like classes. There are some listed in this book, and we'll cover them much later on in our process here. But right off the get-go, your favorite class has to be, you have to pick it, and you're stuck with it. And every time you achieve a level in it, you get either a +1 hit point or +1 skill rank. So, which is kind of neat, because you can end up with a lot more hit points, or you can end up with a lot more skill points. So, because like some classes get very few skill points. And you go, you know what, I want to make sure if I'm going to stay a fighter, maybe a fighter doesn't get a lot of skill points, you're going to say, I need more skills, because, I'm not very smart, so I don't get a lot of extra skills because my intelligence isn't very high, and I need as many skills as I can get. So, and that is the end of our first section of Chapter 3, dealing with classes in general. Now, and then I'll continue this on with another broadcast dealing with each specific class. Thank you.